If you have to leave the meeting early, kindly drop off your electronic voting devices with the checkers. Matt, is there a timer on this? Okay. Okay, well, we do have a quorum, so let's commence. I would like to welcome all town meeting representatives to tonight's special town meeting. In accordance with the Chelmsford Board of Health, I strongly recommend that everyone wear masks for your protection as well as those around you. If I have problems hearing you at the microphone, I will ask you to remove your mask, and the microphone will hopefully be disinfected after you speak. As it has been our practice, we have two screens so that all representatives may read the articles and any amendments upon which you will be voting. Speaking of amendments, all amendments will be submitted on the forms which you can get from either the town clerk or me. This form will create an original and 3 copies. I retain the white copy. The yellow copy goes to the amendment assistant, the pink copy to the town clerk, and you retain the orange copy. Here are the rules with respect to town meeting protocol and procedure. All questions and debate shall emanate from the microphone facing the moderator at the center of the gym and shall go through the moderator. Board or committee members, other town officials, or department heads may use other microphones to answer questions or provide information to the meeting. Speakers shall refrain from asking rhetorical or argumentative questions and shall only ask questions seeking needed information. The questions should be in the who, what, when, where, and why mode. Kindly avoid argumentative questions that start or end with, "Isn't it true?" or "Wouldn't you admit?" I would prefer not to have to rule questions out of order, but I am bound by the laws and regulations that define our conduct, and I will do my best to enforce them fairly and respectfully. I will allow a reasonable amount of time for follow-up questions, but I will have to intervene if any individual is asking an excessive number of such follow-up questions. All presenters of articles shall be limited to 10 minutes. If there are any that require additional time, advise me in advance, and if I deem necessary, I will grant that additional time. I shall notify each presenter and speaker when there is 1 minute remaining. With respect to discussion, speakers are encouraged to be brief, and each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes of debate. You should be able to make your points within 3 minutes. If you truly believe that this is not enough time for you to make your arguments, kindly advise me in advance, and I may allow some leeway. Speakers should ask their questions prior to engaging in discussion. Making inquiries will not be considered part of the 3-minute discussion limit unless you have started discussion and then ask questions. Once the clock starts, it will not stop until the speaker does or time expires. I would appreciate being advised at the time that a speaker is beginning discussion. We do have some other rules of protocol. Please do not refer to any prior speaker by name. The proper designation is to call him or her the previous speaker. Please refrain from personal attacks. Challenging or arguing in opposition to another's position is fair game and is what this meeting is all about. Intentional slander against any individual or group cannot be tolerated. Let us refrain from repeating arguments that have already been made, but new ideas or distinctions are welcome and encouraged. Discussion of pending litigation will not be permitted unless specifically included in the warrant article being debated. If, during the course of discussion, I observe several speakers on one side of an issue but none in opposition, I will interrupt debate to inquire if there are any who wish to express an opposing position or offer an amendment. If there are none, I shall end debate and move the question. If there is opposition, I will move that party to the front of the line and allow debate to continue. I trust that you will all appreciate how this will advance our mutual goal of moving town meeting along. To those who may be next in line, should I ever have to exercise this process, you have my apologies in advance. There will not be any debating from the presenter's podium. They may answer questions, but should they want to engage in debate, presenters will have to queue up in line like everyone else. A person should not speak a second time until everyone has had an opportunity to speak. unless the previous speaker wishes to correct or dispute a statement of fact made by a previous speaker. This privilege will be narrowly construed by the moderator. We have two potential speakers who are not either Chelmsford residents nor town employees who may be able to respond to your inquiries. They are Melissa Robbins from Westford, who is the attorney for the interested developer, and Mark Baranski from Boston, who is a representative from the developer. And I will be asking you shortly if you wish for them to be permitted to address the town meeting. I understand that there may be a number of citizens who are not town meeting representatives, and they will be permitted, as our rules state, to either ask questions or engage in debate. They will not be able to vote. Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Good evening. My name is Paul Cohen. I'm the town manager here in the town of Chelmsford. It's an honor to be here this evening to present to you. The first article is Article 1, pertains to an easement that the town is requesting your authorization for, pertaining to Ledge Road, and also known as Esther Drive, the roadway that's off of Ledge Road. Many of you may recall about a year ago at town meeting, a request was made to secure an easement on Ledge Road in order to assist with the safety of the school children on Ledge Road because of the increased volume of commercial truck traffic. That easement was granted by town meeting, and as we went through the process of implementing that, the property where the easement was to be acquired resulted in an in-family real estate transaction, and basically in discussions between the select board and others involved on the property, the property owner actually owned a second parcel off of Ledge Road at Esther Drive that provides a more suitable location for the bus turnaround. So what we're requesting this evening is a vote to secure this easement off of Ledge Road at Esther Drive. Right, as you can see by the map, it's basically a common drive right now, and how the exchange would work is the school bus would go up to Ledge Road and be able to turn around in the cul-de-sac on the driveway. The property owner would grant the town the easement to utilize the drive for bus turnaround and safety. The exchange for that right is the town will be responsible for the pavement and management and snow and ice removal on the roadway. And we're bringing it to you this evening because the hope is that if the town meeting approves this easement and the weather cooperates, we hope to have this implemented in the springtime, right around the time that the quarry would resume operations and presents that hazard to the children on Ledge Road. So on behalf of the select board and the community, we ask your approval of this easement. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 1.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of Article 1.
Now is an opportunity for inquiry or discussion. I see none, so we will take a vote on Article 1. This requires a 2/3 vote, and this article will authorize the acquisition of an easement along Esther Drive for construction and roadway safety improvements. The article has been unanimously approved. Article 2?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 2 is a request to authorize the Select Board to acquire by gift a land parcel that's off of 4th Avenue that's of 0.04 acres, and it abuts an existing parcel of town-owned property that was acquired previously by tax title. And I want to turn the podium over to John Souza, our finance director, who basically handled this transaction and presented it to the select board and finance committee for consideration and approval. So, John, if you'd be so gracious to present this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good evening, everyone. As the town manager described, this article came about. A resident contacted the town manager's office last fall and indicated that he and his family owned a small parcel of land on 4th Avenue. It's parcel 1875-4, and it's actually shown in the kind of towards the right, the middle of this map. It's outlined in a green box on the map. It has a land area of 1,620 square feet and an assessed value of $4,500. The annual taxes for this fiscal year about $71. And as Town Manager Cohen said, on the map, these parcels are kind of small, but immediately to the right, if you're looking at this screen, is another small town-owned parcel. It's 18-75-3. Just by coincidence, it's the exact same size as the parcel that we're asking you to consider taking action on tonight. The parcel on the right was acquired by foreclosure back in 2014 from a different property owner. So the reason that we're bringing this before the body tonight is under this section of law, to accept a donation of land to the town, it requires a two-step process. The select board voted to approve this donation by a unanimous vote back at their meeting on October 25th. And the second step is to come before town meeting to seek the approval of this body. A common question that sometimes arises is, why would the town go this route rather than just going through the traditional tax title and foreclosure process? And generally, this is a much more expeditious process. When a property owner indicates that they are no longer interested in owning a piece of land and they no longer wish to pay taxes on it, if my office was to start that process of doing a tax taking and then filing a foreclosure case in land court, could easily take 3 to 4 years for the case to work its way through land court. And in addition, the town would pay legal services and court costs that can often approach $1,800 or more for a small parcel. So this process allows us to work in cooperation with the property owner, and it really just expedites the transfer of this parcel to the town. So that kind of gives you the background on it, and if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer those.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 2.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of Article 2.
Time for discussion or inquiry?
Just a question. What is the plan?
Please identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alvin Draymond, Precinct, I think 7 now, or Precinct 5 formerly. Just a simple question. What does the town plan to do with this parcel of land?
Mr. Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, this would be held for general municipal purposes by the town, and if something was to be done with this land, it would need to come back to this body for a vote. So, for example, if another resident that, say, for example, abuts this property, contacted the town and said they wish to purchase the property, it would have to come before a town meeting for a vote, and also it would go to the select board as well.
Thank you. Any others? There being none, we now vote on Article 2, which would authorize the acquisition of land on 4th Avenue for general municipal purposes. This also requires a 2/3 vote.
It's actually not all that uncommon for someone to donate land to the town. It's a convenient way to dispose of the land without having to worry about paying the taxes on it. And as was pointed out, these are kind of held in reserve. The town really doesn't have anything to do with this, that it wants to do with this small parcel, but a neighbor might come forward at some point wanting to purchase it to extend their property, his or her property.
The final vote is 94 in favor, 1 opposed. The article passes.
To fund an employee contract agreement between the town and the dispatchers union for the period that runs from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2022, or roughly 4 months from now. The contract provides adjustments to the pay scale as indicated on the screen of 0%, 4%, and 2%, and then a one-time payment of $1,500. And I guess the background information on this is this contract covers for the period that's going to end 4 months from now, as I mentioned earlier. It is in line with the collective bargaining agreement that the town has reached with its other bargaining units over this period. The reason that it's a 0-4-2 as opposed to a 2-2-2 over that period is under the provisions of state law, the town can only fund an agreement to the prior fiscal year in this type of a case. And so recognizing that, again, in the interest of fairness and equity, that other employees of the town, as well as their relevant pay scale as a dispatcher, warranted a 2% over the 3-year period. We adhere to the state law by doing a 0 in the first year, or basically no funding action in that first year, and then we provide the 4% adjustment to the pay scale for the second year, and then the scale goes up by an additional 2% for this current fiscal year. And then to finish out the equation, recognizing that there was no adjustment in that first year, had they received a 2% in that first year, it would have roughly approximated $1,500 for those employees who were here present at that time. So again, to make it whole, that's how the agreement funds out. That's the entirety of the agreement, and then we presented it to the town accountant for the financial analysis of doing the retroactive pay for their time over that period. So basically, any employee who was on board as of July 1, 2021, 2020, which is fiscal year 21, would get the pay, the $1,500, and then they'd get the pay going forward for the 4% adjustment to the pay schedule that existed back on June 30th, 2019, and then the current fiscal year would get a retroactive to current, and then would finish out the remaining 4 months of this year. And then, like the other unions, we'll start bargaining for a new contract in the weeks and months ahead. So thank you, Mr. Moderator. That's the presentation under this article.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 3.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of Article 3.
Is there any questions, debate? There being none, this also requires a 2/3 vote, and this article would appropriate $82,050 from the General Stabilization Fund to fund the dispatchers' collective bargaining agreement.
And as you can see by the presentation by Manager Paul Cohen, a lot of these collective bargaining agreements take a long time to bring to fruition. And so we have here a contract that is arguably long overdue and will expire in just 4 months. But that's the nature of collective bargaining agreements. There are many unions represented in town. This is just a small one, the public safety dispatchers. And likely when full town meeting comes before us in spring, you'll see a number of other collective bargaining agreements
The article passes
put forward.
unanimously. Article 4?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 4, we're bringing to this at this time, is to seek an appropriation of $1.53 million to purchase and install a new ice rink refrigeration system at the Chelmsford Forum, including all the electrical upgrades that would take place with that upgrade. And then obviously we would borrow this funding over a period of 10 years in order to pay for the improvements to the forum. What's happened here, and you may recall, we were before this body back in spring seeking authorization to put solar panels on the roof of the forum as well as the roof of the senior center. Since that time, the solar panels at the roof of the senior center have been installed and are operational. Unfortunately, at the forum, the roof system for that 1965 constructed building would not support the solar panels on the roof. And that was part of the whole process of replacing the ice refrigeration system, because as part of the clean energy effort, we were going to convert from fossil fuel natural gas to electric as a supply for the refrigeration system. So we had all along been planning for the retrofitting and improvement of the 1985 constructed and installed refrigeration system at the Forum. We're still going with an electrical system at this point in time, but unfortunately what happened along the way to the process is back in December, we had an electrical storm from the severe weather that came in, and it shorted one of the three-phase power into the Forum, and therefore that irregular electrical power going into it, but basically one phase but the three-phase was running, it basically damaged the control panel for the Forum refrigeration system. And to give you a sense of what that looks like, those are, that's all the vintage 1985 style of equipment that was there to run that system. And it immediately basically damaged the compressor as well as that panel board that you see in the screen in the lower right and the one behind the gentleman in the center. You can't get those anymore. And so basically we worked, and really I can't avoid recognizing again the tremendous effort from our Public Works Director, Gary Persichetti, who, as you know, has served this town with distinction for decades. He recognized the crisis that we're in because the current Forum operator was at a standstill. We were in discussions of basically renting a portable chiller system, which would have ran on a diesel engine, to run the Forum and bypass the system. The cost was $10,000 a month, and then it would have cost at least $1,000 a day to run the fuel to keep the Forum system, which would have been from December through April. And the current manager of the Forum was at a loss in terms of his resources, his outreach, and so forth. With Gary's efforts, we were able to secure the control panel by a gentleman who happened to have an old Windows operating system and an old panel, and because he worked through the previous facilitator of the Forum to get this thing running and operational, and within a matter of less than a week, the Forum was back and operational and the ice had been restored, and it got us moving forward until last week. And last week, the problems with that damaged compressor surfaced again, and the whole head gasket had to be replaced and constructed on site. And Gary was there Friday night and last Saturday until, I think you were there until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, replacing the cylinder and making sure that was going to work. And unfortunately, if it hadn't worked, basically the Forum would have been shut down for the remainder of the season. And so the point of this story is we were at the end of the useful life. We'd been preparing to replace the system, and then we dealt with an unfortunate electrical component damage in the system over the years, over the year that preceded our replacing the system. So what we're doing here is we're basically replacing the system, again, going from natural gas to an electrical-based system, and working with National Grid to get the transformer to the site replaced. As you can actually see the transformer to the right in that top picture onto the site, so we need an upgraded transformer. And why we're bringing it here rather than in April is because of the season, we want to get started right away, because by the time that equipment arrives, this current ice season would start. So we're hoping that in the beginning of April, we can get out there, start this work, and then not have too much of a delay, if any, for the fall season to get the Forum back up and fully functioning. So again, we'd ask your support for this needed upgrade to the Forum system, and thank you for your consideration this evening.
Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 4.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of Article 4.
Now's an opportunity for inquiry or discussion.
David Rand, Precinct 2, through moderator to Mr. Cohen. I was wondering how you came up with that 15301. Was this through a bid process, or how did
Yes,
it happen?
and I'll ask Gary to come up and explain how we procure this and how the estimate was generated. Gary and his assistant, Melissa Joyce, are here this evening, and we've worked on this for the past several weeks in getting this up to date.
Good evening, Gary Persichetti, DPW Director. This is being done through a contract called Sourcewell, and that's where these figures are from. Part of the issue with this, of course, is is that the form right now runs on 208, and to run these chillers, it has to be moved up to 480. So we are going to have to do a complete changeover, and we're going to have to bring in a new pole. You're not going to be able to do the pole-mounted transformers anymore. They are going to have to be a ground mount, and we're going to have to bring the power in. So that means the entire electrical gets changed with the chiller plant itself and all the controls for it.
That's not what I asked. I said, was there a bid process?
Yeah, the bid process is through Sourcewell. Sourcewell is the one that will be doing it from that, yes.
You just want one bid, that's it?
Excuse me?
You just got one quote.
No, now look, don't be argumentative.
I'm asking.
He told you that Sourcewell was the successful bidder.
So,
Okay, there were several bids and source code one?
yeah, we seek the pricing on it, but there's a contract called Sourcewell that can be used, and that's what's being used on this, yes.
And then, to the moderator, Mr. Cohen, will the enterprise fund pay this off?
Yes, the expectation is that the enterprise fund operation budget will pay for the debt service over the period of the life of the contract. In the event that it would not cover it, the town ultimately has full legal responsibility to pay that debt service. So yes, ultimately it gets funded through the enterprise fund, but if the enterprise fund goes into arrears, then we have to get an appropriation from town meeting to make up the differential.
Thank you.
David Drayton, Precinct 5B. I just wanted to say thank you to the folks who were involved with this for choosing an electric system. This project had a big potential to set back the town's efforts to try to get us to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. But since the folks involved decided to go with an electric system, I know that I really appreciate that, and the folks in my precinct really appreciate that, because that's something that we can move forward potentially much more sustainably into the future. So I really appreciate that forward-looking approach.
Thank you.
Alvin Draymond, Precinct 5. Just, do I understand this correctly, that the enterprise fund is the fund of the money coming from the forum?
Yes, basically what the town does with the forum and the golf course is we bid the management of the building, and they pay the town a fee for the use and operation of the facility. So the revenue that they get from the users of the facility, skaters and so forth, that's how it comes. So it's not part of the property tax levy. That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Liz Reinowich, Precinct 11 now.
Please speak into the microphone.
Liz Reinowich, Precinct 11. So I think this is all good that you're going from, to a better technology. How many people in town use the rink? I mean, has anyone done a cost benefit like this is of value for the town to have this rink? I mean, do we have a lot of people in town using it? If so, this is great. Or
Sure. Well, I don't have numbers of people in town who use it. What I can tell you is, this evening, right now, Chelmsford High School is playing their hockey games over there at the Forum. Chelmsford Hockey Association, which has a number of youth from the town of Chelmsford, utilizes the facility for all their youth hockey programs as well. And then there are open skate periods and so forth, but I don't have numbers in terms of how many users of the facility are from Chelmsford. But I can tell you that, most communities have a forum or a ice rink system for their community, and that was why when this came available to us from the state a few years back, the town stepped forward and acquired the facility.
Oh, okay, so if we didn't have this, our children would have to go to Billerica or somewhere? Or would
Yes,
they
they'd have to go to
a place-
Billerica, Tingsboro, or other places, and unfortunately, that's what they've had to do last week when it was not operational. People were scrambling for ice time, and the challenge with ice time is everybody wants to skate at 4 in the afternoon if it's a practice, and they want to have their game at 7 o'clock at night. But if any of you are parents in youth hockey, you know that that's not the general condition because there's limited ice availability. So basically, you'd have more cost and more inconvenience if we didn't have this facility running.
Okay, so it is being used, and it's a benefit to the
Yes,
town?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Amaro, 90 Westford Street, was Precinct 7. Just a quick question, and I echo Dave's sentiments, eliminating the natural gas. What about the solar? Is that still going to happen? You didn't mention.
We're still on the solar. Ideally, we'd want to put the solar on the site. The difficulty with the Forum is, if you're familiar with it, is the Forum building itself is in Billerica. The portion of the property where the buses used to be parked towards the wooded area is in Chelmsford. We were looking at putting the solar panels in that area. We're not sure that we can do that because of the wetland considerations. The challenge is that if we put the solar panels on the Billerica portion, the town of Billerica will tax us on that property and then control that use. I mean, we literally pay taxes to the town of Billerica on this facility from the enterprise fund. We also pay a Billerica, water and utility charges and permits, for this. So we're trying to avoid putting the solar panels in Billerica because of the tax consequences. So then the challenge of putting it off-site is, you then have the issues of going through the grid with the solar credits and so forth. So that was why our hope was for the roof. But the roof, and Gary's even looked at and I'll ask Gary to explain that we even looked at doing a double roof, so what we could do.
Yeah, whenever a roof does not qualify, and when we did all the solar back 7 years ago, part of the roof at 9 Alpha, which is our building, the DPW, would not have qualified, but the type of upgrade that was needed was minimal. So the cost to do that section of the roof, I think, was less than $30,000 to get it so you could put the extra solar and make probably 3 times that amount. With the Forum itself, the luxury is not there because of the type of structure the building is to begin with. And secondly, we kind of looked at if you went over the roof with another roof, your problem becomes your structural all the way down to the ground would have to be all steel. Then you'd have to be doing the X-bracing, and again, the cost just exceeds what your profit would be at the end.
Right. Okay. One other thing, I'm not sure this is relevant, but is the DC fast charger still going to go in there that was mentioned before?
Yes, it is. Actually, we're working with National Grid right now on that. They were delayed by about 11 months.
Yeah.
They finally have given out the funding. We're working with them now. We're hoping that we're going to get hopefully a little bit of a bargain because we have to bring the 480 in for that. We're hoping to bring in a power for the fast charging at the same time. But I would say it's probably no more than 6 months away, maybe less.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, for the record, you were elected by the precinct that was the old precinct. So when you identify yourself, you can identify yourself using the old precinct, even though you may be residing in a new precinct. And then when you're elected, hopefully in your new precinct, then you'll know what number it is.
Good evening, Caitlin McCabe, Precinct 3. I also want to say thank you, both of you, for all of your work over these last couple of weeks. If I may answer the previous speaker's question, there are a number of schools that rent ice from the Forum, but when we're looking at our CHA development programs, there are 14 teams, including girls' teams, that comprise over 160 kids, mostly from Chelmsford. As a result of the 2 outages that we've had, there have been a cumulative about 3 weeks of lost ice time. We have not been able to find ice at other rinks. They're used. So for us not to have this, our kids are losing an entire program that has decades of history here in Chelmsford. So I'd urge you to vote in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jim Lane, Precinct 7. Just a couple of quick questions. The Simcoe system that you're showing, the package system, will that sit inside the building or outside?
Inside the building.
Okay. And the other components to the system, the piping, things like that, is that near its life expectancy as well?
Yeah, just to let you know, the two cap motors, the compressor motors that run the chillers, they're 60 years old. And, you know, besides the fact that they're age and the parts, the mechanics to work on them aren't even around anymore. So it's become a very difficult thing. Every part of that, except for what is existing on the roof now, will reside inside. And of course, the big thing is the upgrade to the entire control system as well around that.
Okay, Gary. And just the integrity of the pipe that's going to be attached into this central system that you're putting in, how is that?
A lot of it's in good shape because some of these components, as you know, we list anywhere from 15 to 30 to 60 years old. Some of them have been changed. Some of them will still be changed again so that they'll be upgraded to the newer stuff, and they'll all run and give us the best energy savings that we can put together for that place.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Badru Pilipan, Precinct 5. Mr. Madri, through you to the presenter. What's the expected life of the forum building itself?
Of the forum what?
The building life, estimated remaining building life.
Well, when we went to purchase the building 2.5 years ago, or 3, whatever it was at this point, I'm sorry, I don't remember, we did have a structural integrity done of the building. We did have to make a few structural moves to it then. The roof we've already done, the ice and dashes have been done, the clock's been done, electrical upgrades to lighting were done. So the building is in fairly good shape. We don't expect many issues there at all as far as that goes. I would think you're good for another 30.
Another 30 years. What is the expected life of the new equipment, the new electric chillers and everything else that you're bringing
35, 30?
So will last us through this cycle in itself?
It really should, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. One more question. To the answer that you provided to the previous speaker about solar panels being installed on the roof and paying Billerica taxes on the solar panels, does the state not allow for that to be offset as no property tax on the enhancement through the solar panels? I think, at least for residences, I think that's not included in the excess value. I don't know if this is considered as a town property and a tax abatement.
I didn't get the whole question, to be honest with you, but...
The taxation on the solar installation itself that we would have to pay Billerica,
Yep.
right? Does the state not allow for that to be negated or canceled out because it is it's on solar, it's a producer property?
I honestly could not answer that question for you because I don't know. That's all I know is the solar company that we're working with. I can certainly ask them that question at the same time because they're the ones we've been trying to bring back to see if there is anything we can do.
Okay.
You know, shy of using the roof. So I will ask that question.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any others? There being none, we will vote on this. It requires a 2/3 vote. Article 4 will appropriate $1,530,000 for the purchase and installation of a new ice rink refrigeration system.
Those of you who have been to the forum know that it's a large building with a lot of complexity to it, and that's just the building itself. Obviously, keeping the ice frozen is a whole other issue, and requires sophisticated electronics and also a lot of horsepower to get that ice chilled down. So it'll be interesting to see this new installation. Perhaps we'll have a ribbon cutting ceremony next fall, or free snow cones or something like that.
The article passes, 98 in favor, 1 nay vote, and 1 abstention. Before we get to Article 5, this is the article in which There may be two non-residents who I'm going to ask you to vote on as to whether or not you want them, will allow them to answer questions or engage in discussion with you. That would be Melissa Robbins, who is the attorney for the developer, and Mark Baranski, who is a representative of the developer. So can we have the screen to vote on the allowance of allowing these two non-residents to present at town meeting? And this does require two-thirds vote? No, this, even though it says two-thirds vote, it's really a simple majority.
And this preliminary vote is a run-up to the major reason we're here this evening, which is Article 5, having to do with the conversion of what was formerly the UMass Lowell West Campus off of Route 3A in North Chelmsford to an extensive new development involving 394 housing units. And in order to make that possible, the town needs to change the zoning in that area to allow for multifamily housing. It is, as you'll hear, I'm sure from the town officials, it is already zoned residential, just not for multifamily dwellings, let alone nearly 400 of them.
Well, if we required a two-thirds vote, we had it anyways, but it passes, and those two individuals may be permitted to speak at town meeting. Article 5?
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, this is a zoning article, so I'm going to call upon Community Development Director Evan Belansky to do the presentation on behalf of the Planning Board.
Thank you and good evening. Article 5 is unlike most zoning articles, as it gives town meeting an opportunity to decide the future option of a property and project rather than the typical zoning, which simply affords an opportunity for an unknown project moving forward. So based upon that, to set the stage, I wanted to review the options that are available currently. First, there are 4 options. First one is existing zoning. This property is zoned residential B, which is single family on 40,000 square foot lots. That estimates out to create approximately 22 new single family homes. Within single family zoning districts, conventional subdivisions are whereby every square foot of the property is carved into roadway or private lots. The other option is cluster subdivision, whereby the lots are clustered, meaning the houses are clustered, and the remaining land is available for open space, non-developed. The second is under State Zoning Act. There are exempt uses. Exempt uses range from religious, educational, institutional. These have limited zoning review by local planning boards. The third option is Chapter 40B. I think we're all somewhat familiar with that. Currently in Chelmsford, we are at 10.43%. That number will remain in place until late 2022 or early 2023 when the state issues its updated 2020 census numbers as it pertains specifically to 40B. When that update occurs, the town anticipates that will be approximately 44 units under the 10%. The fourth option is rezoning. This is the option that's currently under consideration. All of these options have pluses and minuses, or in other words, winners and losers. The background as to how this zoning article got to town meeting is as follows. The property was purchased at auction several years ago for $3.2 million. That auction actually took place in room 204 at Town Hall. Since then, the property owner has spent an additional $1.3 million for demolition of the structures and hazardous mitigation abatement. In May of 2021, the Select Board and Planning Board have been engaged with Trammell Crow Residential and the Chelmsford Housing Authority in robust discussions. Both of these boards had asked Trammell Crow to engage significantly with the abutting neighborhoods and residences. In addition, numerous meetings with the Select Board and Planning Board and other town boards and committees, such as the Conservation Commission, the Disability Committee, Finance Committee, Sustainability Committee, have taken place. All of those meetings have resulted in input and feedback to Trammell Crow, where they have attempted to address specific concerns. Specific neighborhood meetings have been conducted with Meadowwood, Windermere property owners on Whiteman and Princeton Streets. Individual abutter meetings have also taken place with Trammell Crow Residential. Screening, buffering, and setbacks with individual private property owners have been discussed. The process further involves 2 interdepartmental technical review meetings. These are with your fire, police, conservation, water districts, engineering, and Board of Health. To date, no technical red flag deal breakers have been identified. In August of 2021, the state issued an eligible location letter indicating that this site was eligible per the new housing choice legislation. This process has led to a collaborative partnership which has created a project-based rezoning with an associated public benefits package. So I just mentioned project-based rezoning, and I want to explain what that is, because I think it's a fairly new concept for Chelmsford. And while it's new to Chelmsford, it's not new to Massachusetts or Eastern Massachusetts in particular. So this process is based upon a specific proposal. What that means is that when Trammell Crow Residential came to Chelmsford, they had a specific project in mind that would meet their needs and suit their business model. They presented concept plans and visuals for what they envisioned for the site. As I mentioned in that robust public engagement process, those plans were further refined based upon abutter input, neighborhood input, and town department comments. The process that has gone on since May provided more details up front that would normally not be provided. Things such as a detailed traffic study and a fiscal impact report were provided up front for review. Detailed discussions about wastewater treatment plants, stormwater, wetlands, buffering, landscaping, and parking have all taken place. This has all been front-end loaded compared to a typical zoning process where town meeting votes an overlay, and then we say that all of the details and discussions will be worked out later when a specific project is proposed. This process provides a more predictable outcome via the customized zoning and the development agreement. I should mention that while the development agreement is not being voted by town meeting, it has been negotiated by the Select Board and is a legally binding document and runs with the land. The development agreement codifies the public benefits package. So some of the project details that have been discussed that were then used to create the zoning overlay that is being considered this evening are as follows. The entire total site is 32 acres, of which 25 are approximately uplands. The project calls for a total of 394 multifamily rental units, of which 340 will be developed by Trammell Crow Residential. These are a mix of unit types and sizes. They include buildings that range from three floors and 4 floors with central elevators and several townhouses. The 54 age-restricted units at 62 and a half of age are dedicated to seniors. Those will be developed and managed by the Chelmsford Housing Authority. Those units will be located in a 3-story building with a central elevator. The chart is a breakdown of the units specific to Trammell Crow Residential. There is an average of 12.66 units per acre. That includes the 25% wetlands that is allotted for in the zoning bylaw. Next highlight is that a total of 75% of the entire property will be open space. It won't be developed for building and/or parking. As it pertains to parking, a total of 658 spaces, including the reserve, are contemplated here. That equals a 1.67 parking ratio per unit. That is very consistent with all of the previously approved 40Bs and other multifamily developments in town. The town tries to target a 1.7 parking ratio per unit, which includes residents as well as visitors. The rest of the slide goes into a bit more detail on the specifics of parking related to the Trammell Crow and the housing choice development. So specifics related to the proposed zoning article. This is an overlay, so what that means that the underlying zoning, which is RB, remains in place. This overlay is being proposed in accordance with some new state zoning provisions, specifically to allow multifamily by right within an eligible location. As I mentioned earlier, that this eligible location has been designated by the state. The other item of noteworthy is that the bylaw is being proposed as a simple majority vote by the planning board using site plan approval.
You have less than a minute. Are you going to need, how much?
A little bit more than that.
Okay.
The existing RM, which is in our zoning bylaw, was used by the planning board as a benchmark for crafting this bylaw. The RM was used for parking ratios required by Trammell Crow Residential, and including the reserve parking is compliant with RM parking ratios. Customized project-based provisions related to density, parking and building coverage, parking setbacks, building height, and open space were all used to create a suburban aesthetic while balancing a variety of interests. This bylaw requires site plan review by the butter notification for all abutters within 300 feet. It will allow for public comment. It will require submission and review of fully engineered plans that include parking, drainage, grading, and utilities. All of these plans will be further reviewed by your technical departments. I should also indicate that the public hearing will provide additional opportunity for further discussion and deliberation and refinements to the plan. And this project will trigger state permitting via MEPA as well as Conservation Commission. This slide documents some of the public benefits that are within the development agreement. So as I mentioned, the first and probably the most important is that this is a predictable outcome. It is customized based upon a butter neighborhood and town input. It provides a path to ensure compliance with Chapter 40B 10% and achieve safe harbor for the next 10 years with the 60 deed-restricted affordable units. It addresses significant local housing needs. It creates truly affordable senior housing. 50% of all of the units are studios or one-beds. That is a critical local housing need. A total of 15% of the units will be affordable. Next public benefit is that Trammell Crow Residential, in partnership with the Chelmsford Housing Authority, will provide a pad and shovel-ready site for Chelmsford Housing Authority to develop their senior housing component. The approximately 6.75 acres are to be placed in a local conservation restriction to be held and managed by the Chelmsford Conservation Commission. That 6.7 acres at a minimum covers the existing wetlands and likely the buffer zone associated with those wetlands. The next bullet identifies some of the financial contributions that are codified and agreed upon within the development agreement. And the last bullet refers to, in accordance with the new state housing choice provisions, and compliance of this zoning overlay with those provisions, the state, we would be eligible for further state grants in Trammell Crow via the development agreement, has indicated that they will assist the town in seeking those grants. The last slide is not one I'm going to spend a lot of time on, but it compares the parameters associated with what the overlay requires compared to 40B. And this slide is intended to serve the purpose whereby I'm aware that there have been a lot of questions and conversations about how this zoning overlay process would compare to a 40B process. So with that, that is my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
A majority of the Finance Committee recommends approval with a vote of 3 in favor, 1 against, 2 abstentions, and 1 absence.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board recommends approval of Article 5 with 4 in favor and 1 abstention.
Does the Planning Board have a recommendation?
Yes, we do. Recommend approval 6-1.
Thank you. Now's the time for questions, and perhaps Attorney Robbins and Mr. Baranski can start to come to the fore in case people have questions for you.
David Rand, Precinct 2. I would like to ask somebody, probably one of the people you're inviting forward, exactly how many people, once all this is built, are going to be able to live there?
Yeah, they're citizens.
I think the proponents are making their way up to the microphone. As you're coming up to the microphone, the question was estimated how many people would live on the campus?
Yes. Mr. Rand, can you just slide over slightly?
Thank you. Mark Baranski with Trammell Crow. It's a broad range of a question. It depends on the ultimate occupancy of the units. Our analytics have indicated with minimum occupancy of 1 resident per bedroom, 575 residents, a low target occupancy with each one bedroom doubled up, 739, a high target occupancy, 1 bedroom doubled up, and 1 room per each, 2 bedroom doubled up, 969. The maximum allowable occupancy would be 1150. We project the occupancy to be between around 739 to about 850. Those are our projections.
Thank you. Mr. Baranski, why don't you just have a seat here? I have a feeling you're going to be busy.
That's a lot more people than I'd read, different articles. 800 was the top number I came up with, but that's really eye-opening. So how many parking spaces for all these people?
Well, I think that was in the presentation.
Trammell Crow will construct 544 spaces. There's an additional 65 spaces that are proposed to be land banked and constructed at a later date if necessary.
So 600 spaces for 1,100 people?
So
that doesn't sound very...
Well, as I mentioned, 50% of the units are studios and 1 bedrooms. That was actually increased at a request of the town.
I went to the planning board meeting and I heard we're going to have Cambridge-type parking. I've been down to Cambridge.
Are you in discussion now or questions?
Okay, questions, yeah. All right. Anyway, that's okay. That answers my questions. Okay, I live in North Chelmsford.
Are you in discussion now?
Discussion.
Thank you.
I live in North Chelmsford, and we've been rationing water. In the last couple of years, it's even rationing it even more. We can only water 1 time a day, every other day, and so I wrote to the water commissioner. Do we have any new sources of water? We're going to add 800, I thought. We're going to add 1,150 people to our water usage, and it doesn't sound like I'm going to be able to have a lawn or a garden or anything. What the water commissioner said that Trumbull Cove is supposed to do is drill wells for watering outside their property. And I kind of think he's inferring that we should drill wells. Well, my neighbor tried to drill a well and went down 30 feet and got no water. So that's not an option for us in North Chelmsford. So unless they drill a water well on this property, I can't vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sue Carter, Precinct 5. I have two areas of questions. The first one is similar to the previous speaker on parking. And I understand there's going to be 65 land bank spaces. Will they be fully engineered and designed as part of the original permitting process so that drainage and everything is already done to accommodate those spaces?
Yeah, that's a current practice within the zoning bylaw and the planning board process.
Okay, because I think that's a big concern, because if they need the spaces, they need to be able to do it without getting fully involved in the permitting process. The other question I have related to parking is, if that is not enough parking with the 65 additional spaces, is there anything either in the zoning or in the development agreement which prohibits them from coming back and saying, you know, our tenants need more spaces? Does this tie them to the total number of the 658 spaces? Could they come back and ask for more if they find they need more?
Yeah, I don't believe there's any restrictions in the development agreement capping the number of parking spaces.
And our zoning will not, this zoning overlay does not prohibit additional parking spaces if they find they need it, correct?
The zoning overlay does not cap the parking either.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I've seen other places where they need more over time. I need my glasses a second. The other question I have is on the setback for the buildings. There's a 20-foot setback from the boundary line of the property. Was there any consideration given to the height of the buildings in relationship to the property lines? I've seen some instances where you have zoning that would be a minimum of 20 feet or the height of the building, and that doesn't put as much of a burden on the abutters. And I'd like to know if that was in consideration, and could that be done without severely impacting the project as it's proposed?
Yeah, so I'll answer it, then I'll ask Mark to add some specifics. My recollection of the location of the buildings is that the buildings are much further away than 25 feet from the property line. Some of that was based upon the design of the proponent. There was some input from the planning board and abutters who preferred to have parking closer to their property lines than buildings. But Mark can speak to a lot more detail as to the detailed discussions that took place with individual abutters on that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we spent quite a bit of time with abutters, focusing on their view lines and also trying to use the natural topography and the existing foliage that's there to use as view buffers. And so the solutions we've come up with in terms of locating our buildings, we've pushed them generally as far back as you possibly can from those lot lines, and I would say broadly, we're well beyond 20 feet, and in some cases considerably further. We've also committed, which is, I think was mentioned, to building at least 6-foot solid fence that will circle the site. We'll also use garage locations to inhibit views. And lastly, in addition to maintaining all the current cover, we intend to plant considerably more plantings to aid in breaking up those view lines.
Thank you. I just have one more question. Where Chelmsford is not used to a project-based zoning, will this be setting a precedence for future projects? I mean, there's a lot of give and take in this bylaw where it has lesser standards than our typical multifamily residential. Is this precedent setting, or is each one totally unique?
I would not view this as precedent setting. I think this is a unique parcel The history is unique. The size is probably one of very few that remain in town. If it were to be viewed as precedent-setting, I personally would think it would set a very high bar, one that I think, generally speaking, the community has established a very robust public engagement process and a high standard, not just with the process, but with the developer. Remember, as you know, the town didn't have to engage with Trammell Crow. It decided to engage, and ultimately that process led to this evening. But the town, moving forward with other opportunities, may have an entirely different experience and may not go nearly as smoothly. But I don't view it as a precedent, just because it's such a unique site.
Okay, thank you.
I noticed that there's a number of people standing over there. Are you citizens who want to speak? No? You're just standing over there. Okay. Okay. And by the way, if there are citizens who do want to speak, they can line up if that's what they want to do. Okay. Sorry, Kathy.
Kathy Tuberty, Precinct 1. I don't mean to harp on this question. I understand that we have 544 spaces identified. Got it. Can you explain the visitor parking of 7.1 spots per unit, which would, I don't know, be almost a whole bunch more? To whomever.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that our parking assumptions are based on the best practices in our developments. And certainly we take guidance and information from the town and what their experiences have been. But I can assure you that if we don't have sufficient parking for our residents, potential or otherwise, we're not renting units, and that's really bad for us. What we found on our other properties in eastern Massachusetts is that ratio is about 1 to 7 Ford guest spots. They're not always being used, and we think it's sufficient. I will add, though, that with the 65 bank spaces, it is about a 1 to 3 ratio.
So, just in case anybody else read that the wrong way, I read that you were making 7.1 additional spaces per unit, not 7 to 1. So my apologies. I can't be the only one that read that wrong. Because I would have read that would have been 2,800 more spots, and I knew that that's not what you meant. Okay, thank you.
I assume we're still in the question phase?
Well, you're in whatever phase you want to be.
Yeah. Sam Polton, Precinct 8, with just a couple of questions to the developer or to anyone. I note that quite a bit of area is going to be set aside for open space and passive recreation. Is there a probability, possibility, or can there be something carved out for the rest of us that don't get to live in this beautiful community? Is there an opportunity for the rest of the town or people such as I that live within walking distance to enjoy that open space and walk the dog, bring the kids, something like that?
Sure, it's a great question, and that was a very detailed conversation. So the development agreement talks about the local conservation restriction to be held by the Conservation Commission. That can provide an opportunity for negotiated public access. The development agreement also codifies the concept of a pocket park, specifically for the neighborhood in the community to be able to walk to this site and further enjoy the new views and the open space. Trammell Crow was also asked about whether this was going to be a gated community or secured community. They indicated that the sidewalks that go from the roadway into the development would be open, and that they would not be restricting people in the neighborhood who wanted to walk on the public sidewalks. The reason for the pocket park is to encourage people from the public to congregate there rather than within the development. But there will be a mixture of opportunities for the public to enjoy the parcel, particularly the wetlands area up front.
So I take that, just to be a little more specific, and I appreciate that. If I were living there, I wouldn't want cars coming in and things, but do I understand that there won't be a fence all the way around that says, "Do not enter," as you walk by this, the beautiful area in the front? I'm very familiar with the site, so if that's not already there, can that be?
Correct. What's been
put
talked
in?
about conceptually is removing the existing dilapidated chain link fence, opening that view up. People from the neighborhood and the community have shown pictures of what that wetland area used to be. And I think that's what Trammell Crow has expressed an interest in trying to work with the Conservation Commission and Planning Board on to recreate or reestablish that open area that was enjoyed by the neighborhood and community.
So then I'm hearing that that's actually going to add to our park space. Would that be accurate?
Yes, I mean, I can't say definitively whether the conservation restriction is going to have trails and encourage public access. That needs to be determined and negotiated between Trammell Crow and the Conservation Commission. At a minimum, there will be a pocket park up front between the entry road and the main road overlooking the wetland area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it all right to speak, or should I get back in the line?
You're permitted to speak.
Oh, I mean, into a discussion?
Sure, you know that.
Okay.
Okay, and now you want your 3 minutes?
Of course I can.
Okay, go for it.
All right, as Sam Polton, still in Precinct 8, and especially after hearing what was just said, I rise in strong support of Article 5, not just because it gives extra benefits to the town and to each one of us, benefits not afforded by alternative uses, not just because it limits development on the site, not just because of the extraordinary outreach by the developer and the willingness to hear our concerns and respond accordingly, not just because of the support that many direct abutters have expressed, but because, in my opinion, it's about the best plan for development on this particular site than could be imagined. And it's by a developer with a proven track record for developments such as this, and it takes advantage of legislation that we're lucky enough to qualify for with the bus stop across the street and everything else. This is a one-time opportunity, in my view. This allows us to have controlled, participatory development, something that we've all wanted with other large projects, which this one affords us. The overlay will allow us to welcome a development that checks every box and is an excellent use of this parcel. It'll bring beauty, stability, and yes, positive cash flow because it has a net tax benefit.
You have 1 minute.
I urge us all to vote yes on something that allows us, for one of the few times that a parcel this size has come to the town meeting, to actually have a win-win-win situation, to benefit from the development as the legislation envisioned. Let's encourage this vision and join in bringing this participatory, controlled development to Chelmsford. Let's be in the fore in creating this kind of development. If it's a success here, it can be spread throughout the Commonwealth. I'd be very excited to be part of this with a yes vote and help bring this type of development, not just to our town, but across the Commonwealth. And just think of the great neighbors that will join us. Please vote yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. Chris Bowman, Precinct 4. I have a statement I'd like to read.
So this is
So
your
if you'd
discussion?
start the clock?
Yep.
Thank you very much. We were just told that by the presenter that this is a zoning overlay district that's a departure from our existing zoning on multifamily and affordable housing. That there's an agreement between the select board and the developer, and those specifics are within this zoning overlay district. And this agreement is acknowledged in the FinCom warrant book. Although the developer appears to be a cut above in seeking out concerns by the residents and addressing those concerns to make it amenable to as many people as possible, there's still a lot of people that are not in favor of this particular zoning overlay or the project. In which case, if this happens to go forward, I would encourage the developer to address those specific concerns. However, in the fall of 2021, the Select Board was informed by Town Administration of a recent report stating these type of large multifamily housing projects is actually a higher financial burden to the town than the annual taxes they are assessed, resulting in a net financial loss to the town. FinCom did not analyze this particular financial situation, and it seems like that would be something that the town representative should have in evaluating this particular zoning overlay district. Keep in mind that with this project-based zoning overlay district, subsequent developers will be looking for a zoning overlay district based on their projects too. It appears this is anticipated in the 2020 Master Plan Update recommendations, which include zoning overlay districts.
1 minute.
But as the, and as far as the by right language in the zoning overlay and Section 3A, in which this is in, the FinCom meeting minutes of January 2022 show that FinCon did ask Town Council about what are the town's obligations and the breakdown with respect to meeting the Section 3A requirements. Because Chelmsford is adjacent to an MBTA community, Lowell, but is not served by the MBTA. Town Council replied to FinCom that Section 3A requirements would be more on the order of proposed guidelines to the town than requirements. So these are not requirements. The zoning should be 2/3 vote, not majority, since Section 3A does not apply.
Your time is up.
And if I could just say, I encourage everyone to not vote for this as it is, and I make a motion that this be tabled until these issues can be addressed.
I don't think. She has to get up and make a motion. I'm seeking town council's advice because I think that you are not able to do a motion to table when you've already addressed the issue. I think you are supposed to just get up and make a motion to table, so we're going to check that out.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for checking.
Okay, we're going to consider your motion to table.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? So, can you get the thing? And I believe this. And this requires just a simple majority. So a motion to table means that we're going to not consider this at this time. And that cannot be reconsidered. So if you pass this motion to table, no one else can get up there and say, I move to reconsider this vote. Yes. That would effectively kill the article for this special town meeting. So can we have just something to vote on here? Motion to table Article 5. Take your clickers and... I'm sorry. No, it's not debatable.
A green on that screen that you see in front of you means that someone has voted to table the motion. Red means they voted against the table the motion. They want to proceed with the discussion of the article. It does not seem to be a very popular motion. I think the town meeting reps, having assembled here essentially for the purpose of this particular article, are eager to see the process through.
The motion is defeated, 12 in favor, 86 opposed, and 1 abstention.
Hi, Amanda Collison, Precinct 2. My question is in regards to the number of children that were going to be added into Chelmsford. The 30-plus children, all of the elementary schools in the district are currently above capacity. I believe both of the middle schools are at and/or above capacity, and the high school is close to it. What is the current plan to address the increased number of children that will be coming into the district? There will be at least 30, potentially more than that.
Why not?
Yeah, so I can start by saying the school superintendent was engaged, not only by the proponent directly, but then did appear at a select board meeting, and I believe FinCom as well, and provided an explanation. I don't want to speak on behalf of the superintendent, but he did indicate that while I think in summary, they don't have an immediate plan, they are aware that they have a current capacity issue and that they need to continue planning for the existing capacity issue and any new capacity issues.
Okay.
And maybe Mr. Bransky, do you have any projections?
Thank you. Yes, the fiscal report identifies two options. One is the development of our project, and it is projected that, did I lose this mic here? It is projected that our development would create between 35 and 49 students across all grades. It's worthwhile to note that the fiscal report also did an analytic of the as-of-right development, the 22 homes, and they're projected to create at least 32 additional students. So we're either on par or we have about a 17-unit delta against that. As was indicated, we did outreach with the school committee and with Dr. Lang. I think it's fair to characterize that there's an acknowledgement that notwithstanding this project, there does appear to be a challenge coming up with the schools. In the course of our mitigation negotiations with the town, we did allocate money that would be allocated to the schools specifically for additional studies to address those issues. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Claire Janot, Precinct 7.
I have questions for whoever can best answer them. One is in regard to the development agreement. It's been said a couple of times that this runs with the land, but there are specific parties to this agreement, right? The town and I assume the company that's doing the development. So I always wonder about the things that we don't ask, so I'm here to ask the things that I don't think I've heard, which is what happens if in some unforeseen situation this project doesn't go forward with this particular developer to this development agreement? Is it then null and void completely?
I'm going to ask Town Council Paul Haverty to assist in answering this question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, through you to the previous speaker. The way that the agreement is addressed, it is for this developer or its successors and assigns. So to any extent that they want to move forward with the development under this overlay district, they're bound and subject to the development agreement.
So specifically, if Trammell Crow decided not to go forward for whatever reason, and somebody else came in to develop it, they'd be expected to meet those terms?
Correct.
They would be?
Including a 40B, for example, or not?
You mean in terms of doing the affordable units?
I mean, the whole scope of the development agreement. Isn't that what talks about the benefits to the town in this project?
By the developments, they are. They are. So again, Mr. Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, the way the development agreement is drafted, it is applicable to the current developer or its successors and assigns.
What is successes and assigns?
Anybody that they deed the property to.
Oh, from them to somebody else?
Correct.
So they have to purchase the property and then sell it to somebody else?
Correct. And,
Got it.
And as part of the process, it was identified that the existing property owner should be a signatory to the agreement as well, so they have also signed it.
Okay, great. Thank you. The second question I have is really about the overall density of the buildings on this site and whether that's now cast in stone if this passes tonight, or is there still, through the coming process for site plan review, possibility of those numbers changing?
So the zoning overlay caps it at no more than 15 units per acre. As proposed, meaning
Wait a
presented.
minute, no more than?
No more than 15 per acre. That's what the zoning overlay caps it as.
The overlay?
Yes. Yes.
I have a clarifying question then. You're talking about the total size of acreage of 34, 35 acres then, when you multiply that out? Because
yeah.
these are all getting crammed into 25% of the space, right?
Correct.
Buildings. Okay.
Correct. The
So
zoning.
we have buildings on 9 acres to house 394 units.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So the zoning overlay caps it at 15 units per acre. That's based upon some methodology that I presented related to removing 25% of the wetlands.
35, 350, 450.
What is being proposed, what's been presented, the project base that's been presented is 12.66 units per acre.
So in theory, this could go up to 35 acres times 15, or over 500 units. Why 15 units per acre?
So the 15 units per acre is a placeholder for future compliance with the MBTA new zoning provisions.
Is that defined in the MBTA zoning provisions?
So my presentation did not speak about the MBTA. I don't view this as
a selling point?
Yes, I'm not presenting this as a selling point to town meeting that we are strategically targeting compliance with MBTA zoning. However, the MBTA zoning, which we will have to deal with at a future date, does require a minimum of 15 units per acre.
Okay,
The 15 units per acre is consistent with other similar housing developments around town. It's not overly dense. It's not on the.
That goes to my next question, which is, to me, I feel like, it feels like 4-story buildings and a lot of units in a small parcel when you ignore the other 26 acres that aren't being developed. And I was wondering what the norms are for density for this sort of development. How this compares to what's happening in surrounding communities, not places that feel far away and uncomparable to Chelmsford.
Sure. So in Chelmsford, and we'll start there because I think that's the most relevant comparison, 40Bs range from 15 to 18 units per acre.
Okay.
And the zoning overlays, some of the projects that have been approved under the zoning overlays range from 15 to 20 units an acre.
Okay.
So within the suburban aesthetic, the units per acre is consistent. What drove this particular project, the 12.66 units per acre, one was, Trammell Crow's, what they like to build and what their business model and marketing is. But the driving factor locally, this process that has taken place, is that if the neighborhood or town didn't want 4-story buildings, you could still build the 340 Trammell Crow units. You would just have more buildings that are lower height, which means less open space, which then gets back to the proximity of buildings to property lines. So as I said in my presentation, what Trammell Crow presented with their own due diligence and then came to the community and engaged, it was further refined. The final product, the project-based zoning, is trying to balance a variety of public interests: neighborhood proximity, aesthetics, infrastructure, things of that, and open space, stormwater. And so that's why you normally see buildings that are 3 to 4 stories high, because they're more efficient.
Okay, all right. I'm going to trust that the infrastructure demands are being handled and appropriately have been opined on by water and all that stuff. But a specific question I have is that in some presentation, it was stated that it's not expected that the ratepayers will bear any of the cost related to sewer. And I'm looking for something stronger than not expected, but we are certain this isn't going to put extra burden on the ratepayers for sewer.
Yeah, so I made that statement. Can't recall what forum it was in.
Yeah, I can't either.
The context of that is and council can assist here. Within the context of a zoning process, a development is required and obligated to cover the cost of infrastructure to serve their project. Part of that cost may be to upgrade existing pipes that are within the network to accommodate their increased capacity. While those detailed studies have not been done yet, as I mentioned in the presentation, the technical reviewers on the town side and the water district side have not found any insurmountable issues. The water district, so on the sewer side, there isn't going to be any connection to the municipal system. Okay. It's going to be a private on-site treatment system. So there won't be any interface between this project and the town's municipal wastewater system. All right, on the water side, the superintendent has issued a letter into the process, indicated to the proponent that they would have to do a water demand study, and they would be looking for capacity increases where necessary and redundancy in the system. So within the zoning process and what the water district, how they normally operate, all of those costs are typically borne by the proponent.
Okay. All right. My last question is really one that I've asked once before and really didn't understand. Zoning's very complex and confusing. And, well, first of all, I know once this is decided, in the event that it passes tonight, it has to wait for approval by the state. Is that correct?
Correct. It gets submitted to the Attorney General's office.
Okay. And so anyway, what I've been asked by a couple of people is, how come this isn't spot zoning? I know you've addressed the precedence question and things like that, but can you address that, please?
I'll ask a town council to address that.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you to the previous speaker. Spot zoning is a zoning concept that has really diminished a lot recently. And it's very, very difficult to establish that an enactment of a town meeting would constitute spot zoning. So I have looked into this issue. I do have a case up in front of me. It states that one claiming that a zoning amendment, a legislative act, amounts to spot zoning faces a heavy burden. To prevail on a spot zoning claim, the challenger must prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the zoning regulation is arbitrary and unreasonable or substantially unrelated to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. In this instance in particular, where we have a state statute that has been recently passed that is encouraging towns to adopt zoning for high-density housing, I don't see any potential that this particular zoning enactment would be disallowed by the Attorney General's office.
Okay, thank you very much. And then my last question is, who decides 62 and a half versus 55 or 60 for senior housing and the number of affordable units? Because God knows we need affordable senior housing in this town.
I see David Hedison here, the Executive Director of the Chelmsford Housing Authority. He can speak specifically to the choice component that's being proposed. Come on, David.
I'd love to hear from David. Thank you. Please.
Good evening, David Hedison, Director of Chelmsford Housing Authority. So when we are talking about senior housing, you asked the question specifically 55 versus 62. When we are talking about, if we're talking about age restricted for 55, that means we could have children that could be permitted to live on the property. My understanding. With 62 and over, all residents must be 62 and over. As far as the number of affordable units, when we're developing affordable housing, it ranges between 30 units to 54 is a sweet spot. You know, I would love to do 2 buildings of 54 on the site, but this allowed us to go to the maximum of 54. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Start the clock. First, I apologize for the lengthy questions, but it's the nature of the way I do my due diligence, and I appreciate all the answers. I want to say thank you to all the boards that have worked so hard on this. I think that there's nothing this town needs more than to serve people who need affordable housing, and to see that wrapped into this project in a way that people support the development, especially the abutters, and hopefully this town meeting tonight. I find that this is something that I'm more than proud to stand up and support. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Helen Blasioli, Precinct 3, I think. I don't know.
Whatever your current
But I'm at 19 Augusta Way in North Chelmsford in the village of Meadowwood, and I am the president. I've been on the board up there for 19 years.
Are you arguing now, or do you have questions? Do you have questions?
No, you can start the clock.
Thank you.
And hopefully give me a few more minutes if I need it.
Hopefully you won't.
Hopefully, that's right. Anyways, but I've been on the board there for 19 years. I can honestly say that never in this town of the 24 years that I've lived here have I seen a developer come to any of the residents and the abutters and be involved and bring their people to talk to anybody and answer any questions. And it's amazing to me. It's amazing to the attention that Trammell Crow has paid, that Mark Baranski and all of his crew has done for us and about us. When they first contacted me, we looked into what Trammell Crow was, and it's worldwide. We were kind of shocked about that. But every place in the New England area that we could find that they go, businesses come and they follow. And I'm just hoping that if this goes through, they build. If they don't, they're in trouble. They build, and then the businesses come. And we have much more of a variety in this town, and it helps us immensely. So I'm just asking everybody, especially because they've gone out of their way to help some of our elderly, that we vote yes on Article 5. I would like to tell the gentleman who said he lived in North Chelmsford and couldn't do a well. We have 2 in Meadowwood. And I think Windermere has some too, so you can do that. So just please think about what you're voting on, this overlay. It's going to be a benefit not only to the surrounding abutters, but for the town. Thank you.
With a minute to spare.
David Drayton, Precinct 5B. To whoever can best answer this, I'm just trying to get a better sense of how this is going to impact the town's goal of hitting net zero carbon emissions by 2050. I've been hearing some conflicting information about some parts of this project. I'm curious, on the roofing, I heard that there might be solar panels, and I also heard they might just be solar ready. Can you clarify which one it is?
I think the proponent can try to answer that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We're absolutely building it to solar ready to accept it. It is our intent to build it as solar. Ultimately, that's a decision of our investors. We believe that they're inclined to do that. I would tell you certainly it's going to be solar if I knew that it's certainly going to be solar, but I think it is very likely going to be solar. It will absolutely be built solar ready, but I don't want to make a commitment that I can't fulfill on. So right now, I'd only say solar ready.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is about the heating of the buildings. I'm curious what the current plan is in terms of being able to heat the buildings. Is there any chance it's going to be electric heating with high-efficiency heat pumps, or is it likely going to be natural gas?
Thank you. We've requested will serves for both natural gas and electric loads. Again, I believe that it is overwhelmingly likely that we'll use electric heat pumps on this site. We probably will have some gas to heat the pool and perhaps some outbuildings. Can I give you certainty on that, 100% certainty? I don't know if I can. I'd say 99% that we're going to do electric heat pumps on the site.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. George Dixon, Precinct 3. Most of the things I wanted to talk about or say have been mentioned already, so rather than bore everybody, I want to say that I've been on the Board of Selectmen for 15 years now, and I started on the original Affordable Housing Committee with Mr. Haverty, I get the names, Sue Carter, Evan helped, Evan was our leader, John Edward, and let's see, there were 5 of us and one resigned, so we basically did what 4. Anyway, we started with 4%, and we got it up over to 10%, and we've been able to maintain it since then. And I'm kind of proud of that. But I want to tell you, so that means the reason I brought that up is because I've been involved in many discussions with many different groups, many projects, and I can't remember anybody being more cooperative than Trammell Crow has been with the abutters, with the dissenters, and there are dissenters, and they have a right to be if they feel it's not what they want. They have a right to express their opinion. I'm just saying that I'm extremely impressed. They've stepped up to the plate. They're giving the town, I could read all this stuff, but everybody's got this. What they're giving to town, nobody has even come close to that in all the years I've been involved in this process. And obviously, if you read what happens if it doesn't go through, we could be in big trouble in the town. So without any control at all. I just want to make sure that, I'm sure people read it, have all read it, and they're a lot smarter than I am. But I just want to point out that, when this stuff goes to Boston on appeals, the town usually doesn't make out that well. But,
1 minute, George.
so I just want to thank, Evan, I want to thank Paul Haverty, who was on the original committee, and the other members I mentioned, and I want to thank Trammell Crow and their staff for being so nice, and I just hope everybody votes positively on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean Griffin, Precinct 9. Mr. Moderator, through you to the speaker. I understand 40B is a sliding scale, and this project will account for some of our allotment. Is that safe harbor and our allotment calculated every 10 years? So it's every census cycle? Okay, so we should not see another 40B project with this development for the next 10 years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I understand that you said this was part of the MBTA communities law. Does this satisfy our whole allotment for that communities law or development or?
Sorry, can you repeat the?
Yeah, the MBTA community law. You said this project was part of that. Does this satisfy our allotment for that that law, that guideline?
Yeah, so as I indicated, I have not presented this based upon the MBTA provisions.
Right.
However, discussions during the process did indicate that as proposed, and based upon the best available information we know right now, based upon the draft guidelines, that it would be compliant.
Okay.
It won't achieve 100% compliance, but it will get us, well along the way of achieving full compliance.
Do you know a certain percentage of the total allotment at 30-40% that this would achieve? I know that's not something you've fully calculated.
Yeah, so I don't want to get into details too much with the MBTA provision.
Okay.
It's not a production plan. It's a planning and zoning threshold.
Okay.
So there's a variety of factors. This zoning overlay of 15 units an acre, plus what's being physically proposed and ultimately may be built, all of those two components would comply. It would help us achieve 100% compliance.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Foley, Precinct 5. Mr. Moderator, through you to the speaker. I heard you say that this will have on-site sewage treatment. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything in the article that requires that, in this Article 5?
It's within the development agreement, indicating that they will not be allowed to connect in the future if there is capacity. Mark, you want to speak more to this?
Yeah, we have made a commitment within the development agreement that notwithstanding any lifting of moratoriums or any expansion of the town sewer system, we will never tie into it, and all sewerage will be serviced by the plant on our property.
Oh, okay. That's nice. Now, there is a moratorium on sewer tie-ins right now, is that correct or no?
I'm sorry?
Is there currently a moratorium on sewer connections or not?
Yes.
There is, okay. And is there an expiration date for that moratorium?
It's been continued through October of this calendar year.
Oh, okay, thank you. And so this agreement, is that binding, that they will not tie into the sewer system?
It is binding, yes.
If the moratorium were lifted in the meantime, or?
Even if the moratorium is lifted, we're bound to build our plant to service our property and to never in perpetuity tie into the town systems.
And could you say approximately how much that increases the cost of the project?
Between the actual construction costs and the state-required escrows for, it's around $3.5 million.
I'm sorry, what?
Around $3.5 million, 3.5 to 4.
Oh, okay. And would you be able to just briefly say what sort of on-site treatment, how's that going to work?
I can do a layman's job of that, but we do have our professional here who could speak in more detail. I would characterize the system as the most advanced available systems that are being currently utilized in eastern Massachusetts. These are systems that are generally underground, and are treating the water, the effluent, to a point where it is potable. It is state required that this water can be recharged. This is a net benefit to the environment as opposed to water being shunted off a site and perhaps, into the river. This is water that ultimately reaches our site and then goes down back into the water table.
Thank you. Thank you. So the water is, the effluent, that's discharged into the ground?
I don't think I would characterize it as effluent. I would characterize it as treated water that is considered potable from the state standards.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brian Latina, Precinct 4, but I identify in the future as Precinct 9. A question I have, the state's new called MBTA law, has that been exercised anywhere? And if so, where? It was created last year?
So it's in its infancy. There's still draft regulations. And as I mentioned, this article is not being proposed. There's no mention in the article or in the presentation specific to the MBTA provisions.
Mr. Moderator, I understood that we would have zoning articles are 2/3 vote. Is that what we're voting on tonight?
Yes.
2/3? Okay.
No, it's not, because it's an overlay.
I'm
right?
sorry?
It's a choice situation. There's choices involved.
Based on the MBTA law that was
No,
passed?
no, it's not. It has nothing to do with the MBTA law.
It's somewhat.
Okay, go ahead. Explain it.
So, Mr. Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, the housing choice legislation actually revised multiple different state statutes. And the one that's in play in particular here is General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 5. And in that particular provision, let me find it exactly here. It notes that, generally speaking, zoning amendments require a 2/3 vote. However, it says for an eligible location, which this has been determined by DHCD as an eligible location, it only requires a simple majority vote of town meeting for an amendment to a zoning ordinance or bylaw to allow any of the following as of right. A, multifamily housing or mixed-use development in an eligible location. B, accessory dwelling units, whether within the principal dwelling or a detached structure on the same lot. Or C, open space residential development. So this falls within that revision to General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 5. So a simple majority is all that's required.
So I mentioned it's in the purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw, and it's also mentioned on the slide that's being displayed right now. The MBTA provisions are not mentioned anywhere in the zoning overlay or in the presentation.
So the choice portion allows just 50% of the vote of this body.
Correct.
And there was some confusion because the Finance Committee, Mr. Moderator, on January 20th, there was some confusion there about multifamily housing project, and it does mention MBTA as a Chelmsford community. And it gave the impression that the quote is that...
Yeah, Mr. Latina, you've already gotten the decision from town council, so I'd like you to go on to something that's going to be productive.
Mr. Moderator, it says Paul Haverty replied, I'm reading verbatim from the minutes of the Finance Committee, maybe they can explain it, said that he replied that they would be proposed guidelines rather than requirements, and he said that currently the 50-acre minimum for anything zoned as multifamily housing, and there had to be at least one area of at least 25 acres. He said that this project was 34 acres, so it would satisfy one prong, but not the 15 units per acre. Do you have to satisfy both those prongs to have a 50% vote?
No, so this is just a sort of an offshoot of the housing choice legislation. The guidelines that we were discussing in the Finance Committee is separate from this requirement. This is a change to the existing General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 5, which up until this point had always required a 2/3 majority for any zoning change. Now this is this is creating a subset of zoning changes that only require a simple majority. This falls within that subset. It has nothing to do with the housing choice guidelines that DHCD has published.
Okay, my concern is that the zoning bylaw has always required 2/3 or a supermajority rather than this. Chelmsford's the first one to use this part of the law. Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, sounds brand new. If that's
I don't know if we're the first to do multifamily via simple majority. I don't think we're the first.
Okay. And this is a special town meeting. This was kind of an emergency to have this. Is the timing required us to show up in February?
No, not an emergency. The process, as I mentioned, started back in May of 2021. Process ran its course. The two boards, Select Board and Planning Board, thought that they had enough information, and the process came to a conclusion. And as part of that process, like pretty much all projects we do in Chelmsford, we bring it to a timely conclusion. And the date was chosen to be this evening.
Our charter says that zoning's typically carried in the fall, so it was a little concern that we were called here in February during a pandemic. And why is the developer, if I could ask, why is the developer not doing the choice units? They're putting a pad in, but will the units be different? Maybe that's a question for our housing authority. Will it be different materials, different builders, maybe lower quality? They have some high quality product here.
David Hedison can speak to the specifics associated with the choice component.
Just to clarify, David Hedison, Chelmsford Housing Authority, the quality. So we have engaged Icon Architecture, and we would be building using low-income housing tax credits through the IRS, and the quality of our construction is significantly, I don't want to say, we're not talking public housing here. We're talking housing that you would find in the market. We're not going to have a lap pool or a wall to play Scrabble or drink expensive whiskey, but we anticipate granite countertops, dishwashers. We do high-quality housing, and if there's any questions about the quality, Brian, I'd invite you to come take a tour with me. I'd love to show you.
Thank you.
And one last question, maybe for the developer. Up to 49 students would be estimated to be in this 380 or 90 unit project once the choice housing's there. There's some set-aside money, and if 49 children end up in that program, the set-aside money is only about $5,000 per student, and right now, without busing, I think we're about $15,000. How do we justify that? Is there a rationale for just using $5,000 as an estimate?
You're referring to the financial contribution?
Yes.
That
There's
was
$250,000 set aside for students.
I'm not aware that there was a methodology to what you're speaking of. That was an initial agreed upon number between Trammell Crow and the school committee, and then as negotiations with the select board evolved with the development agreement, that number was ultimately increased to the 180.
Based on that estimate?
I'm not aware that there was a specific methodology, other than that the superintendent provided information on costs to do certain studies that were needed by the district.
Okay, so our kids are $5,000 in this project is what that number works to. Okay, Mr. Moderator, you can start the clock.
Thank you.
All the years I've been in Chelmsford, one of the first projects, Mr. Moderator, that we saw where they did some zoning work was they cut off a street, and they had taken care of some of the direct abutters, but didn't tell the next neighbors over. And my experience with rezoning in town was that it didn't always come out the way that the discussion and presentations worked out to. So at one point, my wife was still a town meeting rep. She and I were talking about it, and it seemed like every time we did rezoning, it changed the character and the intent of what was described. And I said at that time that I would never vote for rezoning. Every once in a while you have to, I get it. Things do change. Chelmsford has had a development in the last 20 years beyond belief, in my view. I just drove from Worcester to Chelmsford on all the back roads, and the abutting communities don't have these massive projects at every street and corner. If you drive from Littleton to Chelmsford, it's amazing when you hit Chelmsford. We're turning into a very urban, I'm going to call it cityscape with these buildings. Our farms have turned into this, and we plop them here and there. And again, I know people hate it when I tell you, it's happening all over the country in these once suburban areas, and it's unfortunate. Now, I did visit the site with the developer's agent. Fantastic. I love the rapport he has with most of the neighbors. Some of them don't agree with what's going on up there, but a lot of it is fear of 40Bs. That is a housing project that gets stuck in our community without all of the protections that a good developer would do, and a lot of the feedback. So I applaud the developer to having come out and talk to everybody, it seems. However, I'm very concerned about the overdevelopment of our town.
1 minute.
So I'm kind of torn. I'm very torn on 50% vote for zoning changes. That is a very low threshold, and every one of our neighborhoods could change from single-family to multifamily if we continue down that line, which the governor seems to want to do. I'm very concerned about precedent setting. The MBTA community thing has me horrified that if we're truly an MBTA community, we've got a $500,000 liability that we're going to hang off of that. Possibly some more bus lines, maybe a train station. Trains go both directions, and will urbanize us even more. We still haven't seen all the business development in town that we were promised on our other section in my town, in my section, but
Your time is up, Mr.
project.
Mr. Latina.
Decent project, but precedence is scaring me, so I'm going to vote no.
Thank you.
Jan Spence for Dornock Circle, Precinct 3. I'm a trustee at the Windermere Condominium Association. We are a community of 56 homes, 55 and over. We are perhaps one of the communities most strongly affected by this development. The two 4-story buildings will be the closest to us. We are already having an issue with cut-through traffic because people coming down Princeton Street try to avoid the light at North Road, and they cut down, they come in Augusta Way and take a quick right onto Windermere, cut through to Fairview, miss the light, and they're right on their way on North Road. Meadowwood doesn't have that same concern because they're a dead end. So if you cut in there, you're going to have to go through Windermere to come out. And we are having...
I'm sorry, are you in debate, or did you have a question?
Yes, I'm wondering how...
Okay, so
Yes.
tell me your question, because it sounds like you're in debate.
Oh, I had asked that earlier back in the line, and I was told it was both question and discussion.
Right, but if you're in discussion, I have to start the clock.
Oh, fine, would you start the clock?
Thank you.
I don't intend to take a whole lot of your time. All right, our concern is the cut-through traffic and the density of this project. To put that many people on that small a number of acres, and where are they going to go when they come out to bike ride, skateboard, rollerblade, or whatever? The only area they have to go toward is Windermere or Meadowwood. And that is another concern. We insure ourselves. We maintain our own roads. These are not town roads. It's private property. And it's a major concern for us how we can govern this kind of a situation, because you know that people are going to want to go off of the property at times, depending on their age and whatever. And if you go in the other direction, you're heading right toward the Rourke Bridge. So socially, for any activities you're going to be involved in, you're going to head in the other direction, which would be right to us unless you're going to cross Princeton. And we have some major concerns. I've attended all of the meetings with Mr. Baranski. He's been wonderful, very helpful. But we still have these concerns. And I would ask this body to consider voting no on this particular development. And it's really, I kind of feel like we're being a little bit thrown to the wind because I don't think our concerns have really been addressed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You can start the clock. I'm Glenn Thorin from Precinct 5, town meeting representative. I became a town meeting representative starting in 1989 because there was a development that was going to be put behind where I live in South Chelmsford, and I was concerned it was going to be too big. So we had discussions with the developer, and the development became a size that was suitable for the area of the old drive-in movie theater, fit nicely, and ever since it was put in shortly after that 1989 time frame, it's been a wonderful development. There's been no problems there. It's been quiet. I live directly behind it. No people come through my yard. One thing we do in Chelmsford is try and plan what happens next as carefully as possible. So I want to compliment Trammell Crow for the work that they've done with the neighbors. And I also want to compliment Dave Hedison for getting involved in these projects, because we know what work Dave Hedison has done in the town before, and I trust Dave. I'm asking you to vote for this project for a couple of reasons. Number one, because it has been talked over a lot. There may be some things that still need discussion, but the project has been discussed with the neighbors, been discussed with the town, been discussed with the police and fire chiefs, and they've looked at it and made some adjustments. I've read what the fire chief said and what I've spoken directly with the police chief. What we are trying to do is have the best outcome for Chelmsford. And the thing that I didn't realize that just hit me a few days ago is if we move this project forward, we are exempted from 40Bs for a decade. And we have had some 40Bs in town, and that's been some difficulty. But now we have the entire future of that nice piece of property in our own hands.
1 minute.
Thank you. And because we've got a project that has been well planned out and looks like will fit well within the town, I think this is a project that we should vote in favor of, and because it will prevent 40Bs from coming into that large property if we turn this down and putting literally anything they want on that piece of land. A density far greater than we're looking at, homes that will look differently from what Trammell Crow builds, different situation with respect to the affordable housing, which Dave Hedison is working on. Every piece lines up, as you look at it, for the benefit of the town. Issues will have to be resolved for landscaping and other minor things, I hope. But primarily, this project should move forward because it's a good project for Chelmsford, and we should support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Tassi, Precinct 2. I have a couple of quick questions. One, do you have a spot for the snow to go to in the winter months? Or is it going to take spaces that you've already provided?
I'll defer to our civil engineer, but snow storage is an important part of our site plan, and it has been allocated. Yeah, it won't interfere with parking.
All right. You can stop the clock. I will say I've lived in this town forever, and I live in a congested part of North Chelmsford. The parking situation, which I have gone over with me and the previous speaker, have had many issues with. I disagree with it. It's just not going to work. The parking is always an issue, and I'm going to be honest with you, it's a quality of life issue, and I can prove that in my own neighborhood. Because I live on Gay Street, and everyone eventually turns 16 and needs a parking spot. It is always an issue. It will always be an issue. Every overlay we've ever voted for here has come back to bite us. I can't stand these overlays. It's ridiculous. It's sad that now it's just a majority. That's not right. That's a very bad precedent to have. And also, I do have one question before I can. What is the occupancy rating for each unit? So if you have a 1-bedroom, what is the occupancy for that, a 2-bedroom, and a 3-bedroom?
I believe the maximum occupancy per code would be 2 per bed, which, as I stated earlier, would be about 1,150 residents. Our projections, as I said, are in the 739 to 850 range.
All right. I just don't like the overlays. They always come back to hurt us. I think the parking is a long-term issue. The septic system, I don't know. I really feel that should kind of be bonded or something, so in case some emergency or something happens. Go ahead.
In fact, that is the purpose of the state's escrow that is applied. It's effectively a bond. If for some reason we decided to be negligent and did not immediately respond to issues on the site, the state has the right to draw that escrowed money, which we believe will be about $500,000 to $700,000, to immediately address issues. So it effectively is a bond.
Okay. I just asked people to vote no. I just don't think the overlay is a good way to go.
Okay.
Deirdre Conley, Precinct 1, 19 Billrica Road, and I'm also a member of the Planning Board, though I'm not speaking for the Planning Board. But I do want to say a couple things. One is, clearly listening tonight, there's a few issues that haven't quite been ironed out. The money for the schools, the traffic through the over 55 areas. I would say that the existing zoning, while it would allow for a subdivision and single-family houses, I think that it hasn't been said here tonight that that's never going to happen, because the money that could be made by selling single-family homes, not to mention the problem with the sewage, would be so much less than the owner paid for the property, that wouldn't happen. So I think really what we have here, in my opinion, is a choice between this plan or some other potentially larger, potentially 40B, because we won't be in the safe haven. Both of which options would cause probably more traffic through the abutting over 55 neighborhoods and higher numbers of students entering the school system. I ran for the planning board because I felt like there was an issue, sorry, discussion, 3 minutes, clock's going.
Yeah, that's what you've been doing.
I just didn't say it, so. I ran for the planning board because I thought I wanted to make sure that the neighborhoods were heard and the citizens of the town were heard. And I would have to say that I'm very proud of the work that the planning board has done on this project. It provides high-quality housing, where a number of which, the majority of which are single bedroom and studio. We really need this. Also 60 units of affordable, 54 of which will be in the choice age-restricted building, and actually very affordable. I think the adjusted mean income is 40 or 50%, David? Anyway.
1 minute.
One of the most important things is that this brings us back into the safe harbor, and I think to have no hostile 40Bs for 10 years is, the importance of that can't be overstated. And then finally, the mitigation and the community outreach that Trammell Crow has done, I feel like, I mean, this is the first major development I've been a part of, but it's a pretty high bar that's been set by Trammell Crow, in my opinion, in terms of working with the abutters on a very granular level, putting forth money for the travel improvement or implementation study, the money for the PILO, the lot and the work on the lot for the choice people, the preservation of open space. I feel like they've worked tirelessly with the abutters, and I want to thank everyone who's been involved in this project. I'm very proud of it.
Thank you.
I urge you to vote yes.
Michael Fulton, 8 Muirfield Way. This is for discussion. Thank you for the opportunity. I live in one of the approximately five units in Windermere with direct access, direct view of this site. I could see the upper level of one of the existing buildings when UMass Lowell was still on site there before they were torn down. I'm here to support the article, support the project, and I'll tell you why. The current owner has about $4.5 million invested in this site. I'd love to see it sit as a wildlife preservation, but it's not going to happen. That money, that project, that piece of land is going to be developed. And frankly, I like the idea, I love the idea that there'll be senior affordable housing there. I think it's great that there'll be more housing units for people in general, because all these great companies in Massachusetts that are doing well here, well, they're bringing people to work here, they have to have a place to live. And if you take a ride down 128, you'll notice in Needham, Woburn, Dedham, Braintree, apartment buildings, 4 stories, they're everywhere down there now. That's what people want. They can't afford a single-family house. I look at this project, frankly, though, from a strictly selfish point of view, because I can see it. What Trammell Crow's offering, what they've put down in paper, they're moving the buildings back from where they were originally. The site up there, the building was actually closer to where I am. It's going to be moved back, and the others are going to be moved back from the abutters. They're leaving a big stand of beautiful pine trees and maples and oaks that are up there. They're not going to cut those down. They're going to plant some new trees. They're going to put up a fence. Going to do drainage improvements. They've granted an easement to Meadowwood that runs about 8 feet along the driveway going in, that they're going to be able to keep that. They're also granting an easement over a parcel that's about an acre in size that the people in Meadowwood look directly at.
1 minute.
This project has already been reviewed and amended. It's going to be reviewed again by the planning board if this article passes. They're going to look at it again. I don't want to roll the dice here and see another developer come along, whether it's a 40B or not a 40B, because they are not going to provide the accommodations to the abutters that Trammell Crow has. I would sleep a lot better at night knowing that this is a proposal, it's on paper, we know what it's about, it's a good quality buildings that they're building, it'll be a benefit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Labossiere, One Augusta Way in the village of Meadowwood. I'm a neighbor to Mike, who just spoke, and so anybody coming into Meadowwood comes right by the side of my house. So I was concerned about what I was looking at. Oh, you can start the clock, sorry. I'll be done in two and a half minutes. And Trammell Crow came over and told me what they were going to do. And the buildings they're going to build the buildings on top of the hill, a little bit further from Windermere than what some people might suspect. And so anyway, I think this is a good thing for the town. I think it's a good thing for me. I'm going to be able to see outside and see what I see today. I want to also thank, while I'm here, I want to thank the chair of the town select board, for recognizing my email to the town reps, and to all the town reps who received my email. I have all the signatures of 71. We have 71 homes in Meadowwood. I have 71 signatures. Not all approve.
Please speak into the microphone, okay?
Pardon?
You can please speak into the microphone.
Oh, not all approve of this project, but 71 homes, and I got all 71 signatures here. And they're not here today because they're they're a little bit older and they can't come out, or some of them can, but, or they're in Florida, but otherwise I'd probably have double the signatures. And they also, what got me going a little bit was I went to the town COA this morning, and on their messenger here, their board, I had dinner with, breakfast with my fellow veterans this morning, and it looks right here, and it says on their front page about the special town meeting. I'm wondering why some people don't know when the meeting was. But it says right here, there will also be a request for an appropriate of funds to construct affordable senior housing at this location. And I said, okay, I'd like the builder. I hope he gets the deal. And but in order to build some homes for our seniors, we have to have a place to put it. And right across from me would be perfectly fine. And Tremel Crow's done a good job of pointing out value to the town. The economics play. We just have to manage it together in partnership.
Less than a minute.
Make this happen, and so I urge you all to vote yes for Article 5. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Roger Logeman. I live at 8 St. Andrews Way, and that makes me one of the very closest abutters to this proposed project. You can start the clock, please.
Thank you.
I came here to speak in support of the project, and I don't want to repeat everything that's been said about what a great job Trammell Crow has done, and they have. But I did want to point out that if this project isn't approved, that land is surely going to be developed. The owner is not going to let that investment just sit there. There will be something put there. And so the question for me is, if I'm going to have a new neighbor up right above me up the hill, who do I want the town to partner with to develop that property and to help solve whatever issues come up? And there will be issues, but the important thing is who do we have to work with to solve those issues? And Mark has done just a terrific job so far. I would expect Trammell Crow to continue to do a terrific job. And even though I know there's going to be issues, I think Trammell Crow is going to help us work through them, and this project is going to be a benefit not only to the abutters like myself and Meadowood and Windermere, but also the entire community. So I hope everybody votes in favor of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Clancy, Precinct 2. Unless I don't need to, I'd like to move the question.
I don't think you really need to. I think we're all set. Okay. So, we're now going to vote on Article 5, which is to approve the overlay town zoning bylaw by inserting a UMass West multifamily housing overlay district. Simple majority.
This is Kelly Beatty for Chelmsford Telemedia. It's been a very interesting set of discussions here. It's not often that people who are right next to a proposed development come forward and say they are in favor of it, but you heard that multiple times here this evening. And as you can see by the green board, this is passing very strongly in favor of the proposed overlay. Again, this is a change in the zoning the zoning for this particular parcel from straight residential to multifamily residential, a precursor to being able to...
It doesn't matter whether it was a simple majority or two-thirds, because 89 in favor, 13 opposed, so the article passes.
Mr. Moderator, the final article is Article 6, and it was placed behind Article 5 because this is the article that would appropriate funds to construct affordable housing at 255 Princeton Street. The appropriation is a request for $1,235,000. $635,000 would come from the Affordable Housing Stabilization Fund, which is the fund that's been established for previous projects where they put funding in lieu of constructing affordable units so that we can construct, as we are in this case, affordable housing. And then $600,000 comes from the Community Preservation Fund General Reserve funding source. With that, I'd like to welcome David Hedison of the Housing Authority to give you a brief overview of how this funding will be used for this project. David,
Keyword was brief. Oh, sorry, up there? Good evening, David Hedison, Executive Director of the Housing Authority. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Back in 1987, when I started with the Housing Authority, I always said I wanted to build more units because seeing seniors walk in the front door of our office and be told it's going to be a 5 to 7 year wait was pretty much a death sentence. It's now 2022, and we still are saying the same thing. So with this project that was just approved in the previous article, we have now opened the door to have a location for 54 new units of affordable senior housing. This, for me, is another dream come true, and for a number of seniors that are on our waiting list. In addition, there's been a number of projects approved by the Planning Board that did not want to develop affordable housing, and the money was put into a special account. Those funds will now be applied towards this project. The overall award is about $22,000 per unit, and with that $1.2 million, I will get it matched with another $11 million or more in state and federal funds. I ask for your support tonight to give 54 more seniors a place to call home. 54 seniors, of which only about 60% will have cars. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 6.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board recommends approval of Article 6 with 4 in favor and 1 abstention.
Time for questions or discussion? I guess you were all discussed out. Okay, so let's vote on this article. It does require a 2/3 vote. Appropriating funds for affordable housing stabilization from the Affordable Housing Stabilization Fund and the Community Preservation Fund General Reserve for the construction of senior affordable housing. While you're voting, I would like to thank Kathleen Canavan and the Facilities Department for setting all of this up, and Jay Lang, the school committee, and the school department, and the faculty here for setting this up. And of course, always, Chelmsford Telemedia for setting all of this up. Hopefully next meeting in April, we'll be able to be at the Senior Center again, and we won't have to wear masks, so let's keep a good thought. The article passes 92 in favor, 1 opposed. Have a wonderful and safe day tomorrow, okay? I have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
And so with that, the moderator, John Curlin, has brought to an end of this special town meeting. And it was special in a lot of ways. For those of you who've watched, first of all, it proceeded very efficiently, I thought. Even the most contentious issue, which was the Article 5 involving this zoning overlay district that you've been hearing a lot of, so I won't try to repeat that. I was standing right next to the long line of people who were waiting to have their discussion. And this is exactly how a town meeting is supposed to work. People got to air their points of view. Moderator Curlin has done a great job of making that an efficient process, a fair process, and I commend him for it. And apparently, we're also to commend the developers who have become enamored, the townspeople, especially the abutters, have become enamored of this project. We want to see it go forward. It is, as was pointed out, probably the best of all worlds in terms of being able to develop this project into something that's workable. And I don't want to overstate the fact that for those who might not know what a 40B is, you heard that number kicked around a lot. This is when, because we do, for a town that does not have enough affordable housing, it's a 10% threshold, a developer can come in and cram an incredible number of residences in a small property as long as some of them are considered affordable. By this project, we will now be over that 10% threshold, and since that's only determined every 10 years during a census, it means that Chelmsford will be insulated, in a sense, from any of these affordable housing projects, the 40B projects, over which the town has very little control. And I think that drove a lot of the vote that you saw this evening, the fear of something else going into this property that used to be the UMass Lowell West Campus. So we're going to bid a fond farewell, maybe not so fond, to the Chelmsford High School Gymnasium where the last few town meetings have been held. We look forward to seeing you in April at the spring town meeting in which our annual budget will be decided, and maybe we'll get a little more of an inkling as to how much of the federal pandemic recovery money has come Chelmsford's way and what we're going to do with it. So I hope to see you there. Kelly Beatty, for all the staff and volunteers of Chelmsford Telemedia, we thank you for watching. Good night.